Hi, and welcome to New Gods Sunday School. I'm Tom Scioli, author of Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics. I Am Stan, a graphic biography of the legendary Stan Lee, and Jack Kirby's Star Warriors, The Adventures of Adam Starr and the Solar Legion. I'm also the author of Witchman, a new superhero comic book which recently had a successful Kickstarter campaign. We looked at Mr. Miracle number 19, followed up on Jack Kirby's Mr. Miracle number 18, but it was a new team of Steve Englehart and Marshall Rogers taking over a Jack Kirby property. Now we have the Return of the New Gods, which is numbered 12, picking up from the numbering of New Gods, which ended with issue 11, again with a new creative team. At last, in their own magazine, again, from the stars to planet Earth, to defeat anti-life or die. We have, some old friends coming back. We have a new character here, Jezebel, and then Orion has gotten a complete makeover, looking like Marvel's Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel had sort of become a success imitating New Gods, so I don't know if maybe they thought, hey, let's imitate the successful imitation. I'm not sure what the thinking was behind the makeover, and there's never an explanation given. Now, there was another New Gods issue prior to this, both written by Jerry Conway, which was in an issue of first issue special, like a Return of the New Gods, sort of testing for this. And it had this new costume of Orion, and there was no explanation for it in there. There's no explanation for it here. There's no origin given for Jezebel. She just sort of shows up. It brought back Calabac, and with just a sort of quick explanation of Calabac saying, Black Racer rejected me. The Black Racer tried to take me away and left me behind, was unable to. So sort of undoing the death of Calabac there. It wasn't a particularly inspired issue of comics, so I just skipped to this one. And since it is, the numbering continues here, it seems to make sense. Cover by Al Milgrom is pretty good at sort of approximating an amalgam between Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko. It's written by Jerry Conway. The art is by Don Newton and Dan Adkins. Here we have a new lineup, a reintroduction of the New Gods. They're all sort of flying into battle together. And we have Orion, again, in this new costume. With Orion in this new costume, I understand why they felt the need to sort of change up his costume. I love Orion's costume. I think it's amazing. I think it's great. Kirby sort of designed him with his Astro Force equipment, his Astro harness, which is this very, ornate, detailed thing. And at a certain point, Kirby kind of wrote that out of the story. And without that Astro harness, Orion's costume is very simple, very basic. But again, Jack Kirby can make these amazing ornate costumes, and then he can make these amazing sort of basic costumes. So I think Orion's costume without the Astro Force equipment works great, kind of like Silver Surfer, this kind of, sleek, minimal costume. But like, I understand somebody coming from a traditional superhero comics approach and thinking like, okay, we need a couple more bells and whistles. And so, he has them here. Again, I'm not a fan of this costume, and it sort of works as a detriment for me reading this book. It doesn't read to me as Orion. He does have an O on his chest to let you know it is Orion. Kind of leaves me cold, and so it doesn't feel like a return of the New Gods. It's tough to make this stuff play without Jack Kirby, but then, without, the main guy's costume, it's sort of doubly damned. We have Orion in his Marvel costume. We've got Forager, Light Ray, Lonar on his horse, Metron, and a new character, Jezebel. And we get this cool double-page splash that kind of, gets you up to date, gives you a little bit of context for the New Gods, and that they sort of, evolved out of the old gods. And here's a depiction of the old god, of one of the old gods. And, here's Darkseid and his, mission to conquer the universe. They're flying into battle to the planet Apocalypse. They're fighting parademons, who look pretty different this time around. They look a little more demonic, a little more like conventional demons, a little less like sort of, Jack Kirby, sci-fi demons. And this character, Jezebel, I sort of wonder about her. There's a character in Walt Simonson's Orion who looks a lot like her, who's called Jarella. and she is sort of plays a similar role to Jezebel from the Bible, or Delilah or something. And she's got blue skin. She looks a lot like Jezebel. So I don't know if Simonson was going to use Jezebel, but maybe thought the name was a bit much, and so just sort of created his own character that was sort of a stand-in for her. But anyway, the battle's going on. They get to Apocalypse. Apocalypse is looking the way it looks in a couple of the early episodes of Superpowers, when Darkseid and his buddies first show up in those Super Friends stories. There's a couple early episodes where they show Apocalypse, and it's sort of like a volcanic world rather than the industrial hellhole, this techno-industrialized hell that that's in the Kirby comics and in most depictions of the planet. So now they're on the surface, they're fighting through Darkseid's palace, and kind of a reenactment of issue 1 of New Gods, but now Orion's not alone. He's not a loner. He's got friends with him. Things have changed that much. He's got a team. And so they fight their way through, and then just like in issue 1, Metron makes his appearance and tells him that, Darkseid's not here anymore. Except this time he didn't go to the Earth, he went to the moon. And so they follow him via boom tube to the moon. They find Darkseid's moon base, and then they find a technical readout. Anti-life equation subjects believed to possess a part of the equation. Dave Lincoln, Metropolis. Donald Bradford, The Project. Lorraine Hampton, New Orleans. Richard Rowe, San Francisco. Brigadier General Maxwell Torch, SAC Air Command, Colorado. Nomac, Fairbanks. And so now, they have this little clue, which, is so obvious that it might even be a trap from Darkseid, but they're going to go and, check out. So Darkseid has honed in on the humans who possess the pieces of the anti-life equation. He's going to go after them. And so the New Gods are going to split up to try to get to those people first and protect them from Darkseid and his minions. A return to former glory, guided by Jerry Conway, writer, Don Newton and Dan Adkins, artists, Liz Berube, colorist, inspired by the imagination of Jack Kirby, creator. So it's done with, respect to Jack Kirby. This is coming after Jeanette Kahn and Paul Levitz have taken over DC, and yeah, one of the first order of business, one of the first things they did was, hey, let's bring back the New Gods, correcting what, in my opinion, was a massive blunder on the part of the previous administration in canceling this, masterpiece. So Orion is sort of flying circles around these jets, some, sort of standard Kirby-esque superheroing straight out of issue 1 of the Fantastic Four. Maybe for fun, I'll see what it looks like if you draw sort of a classic Orion here. Also, Orion seems to exhibit the powers of Captain Marvel. He can sort of fly unaided, whereas in Jack Kirby's comics, he would need Light Ray to give him a lift if he didn't have access to his Astro harness. He wasn't able to, sort of zip around like Superman. Little interlude, and now he meets up with Brigadier General Maxwell Torch, the person he's been looking for to begin with, the guy who Darkseid seems to think holds a piece of the anti-life equation. And yeah, it's kind of like an old Justice League issue. Everybody's sort of splitting up. Bug is going to look for Donald Bradford, who works at The Project. Obviously the project from Jimmy Olsen, what is later referred to as the Cadmus Project by future comics creators in sort of a tribute to Jack Kirby's Cadmus seed story, but what Jack Kirby refers to as the DNA Project or the Project. So, we have that thread coming back in. Forager explains to this guy that, yeah, he's got, 1/6 of the anti-life equation. He's got a piece of the puzzle, and then he goes on and tells his backstory, as shown in New Gods number 9 and 10, Paul, that's Paul Levitz, the excellent New Gods number 9 and 10. Takes off his mask to show his face and, try to get this guy's trust. And then in Alaska, Lonar is riding around shirtless on his horse. A very brief appearance, but it's nice to see Lonar hasn't been forgotten. He was always one of my favorite characters, too. Dave Lincoln, one of the humans from, Jack Kirby's run. Why'd I ever become a private eye anyway? All I ever get nowadays is divorce cases. So, he's a private investigator, and he's investigating divorces. I guess kind of like Jack Nicholson's character in Chinatown, which would have been, a relatively recent movie around this time. Jezebel's there to talk to him. And then Metron is meeting up with Lorraine Hampton, like a musician, kind of like Rick Jones in the Captain Marvel stories. And now Light Ray is putting on some regular, late 70s street clothes to find Richard Rowe, the most delicately balanced of all the humans involved. A Vietnam veteran, he apparently became heavily dependent on drugs during his warrior years. And as such, his grasp on reality is fragile, certainly not strong enough to accept the appearance of God. Therefore, I must alter my appearance as something more suitable. So that was something I forgot to mention when we were talking about the return of Mr. Miracle. A big difference between when Jack Kirby was working on the New Gods and Mr. Miracle, the Vietnam War was a current thing. It was still going on. These new Mr. Miracle and New Gods series are in a different era. They come after the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War is done at this point. So a lot of Jack's commentary was about what was currently going on in the Vietnam War. So here we've got, a different perspective with some time. And so now, a story of a, veteran who came home with a drug addiction and, post-traumatic stress disorder. It's a different era, and these kind of issues are, even though it's not that many years later, it's these issues can be, spoken about a little more frankly in comics at this point. And even though it's kind of stilted and cheesy and heavy-handed, it is progress for the medium to be able to, these trails were blazed by people like Jack Kirby and Stan Lee and Gil Kane and Neil Adams, Denny O'Neil. Those doors were kind of opened, and now this kind of commentary is able to be more common from, subsequent creators. Now, Orion's getting to explain himself a little more to the general. We're kind of jumping around a lot, but the general doesn't like what he's hearing. He thinks it's a lot of BS, and he thinks that Orion might be a foreign agent. Shoot him down. So they're trying to shoot down Orion. I made a mistake approaching the human honestly, a mistake I won't make again. Orion escapes, and when I return, it will not be with honesty, but through deception. Such do they deserve, and such shall they receive. And Darkseid, wherever you are, whatever rock under which you hide, I will root you out like the vermin you are. I will drag you into the light of day, and I will destroy you. For the battle has begun anew, and only death will stop me now. Somewhere the challenge echoes, and somewhere Orion's true father hears the challenge and responds in kind. Yes, Orion, the battle begins anew. The pact which kept the hounds of war at bay has indeed been broken. From this day, father will fight son in a final conflagration, and when the Holocaust ends, only Darkseid will survive. To be continued 30 days from now, the Apocalypse War flares into battle. Be there for the death song machinery. This isn't terrible, but it's not particularly inspiring. And yeah, the Orion costume is a big bummer. I really liked what they were doing with Mr. Miracle, and with this, I'm kind of like, yeah, whatever. I'd be fine never reading another issue of this, but it's not terrible. I've read worse comics. And that conversation about the Vietnam War, there's a mention of it in Mr. Miracle 19, where he says to Barda, oh yeah, I came to Earth during one of its many wars, which was interesting because I thought, oh yeah, he's referring to Vietnam, and it's like, oh yeah, Vietnam is, by that point, the Vietnam War is over. But then I thought, oh, well, maybe he came there before the Vietnam War. Maybe he came there, during World War II, or maybe he came there during, the War of 1812. Or it's kind of wide open. And subsequent creators have said that, oh yeah, when Mr. Miracle leaves Apocalypse and goes to Earth, he doesn't go straight to issue 1 of Mr. Miracle. That other writers have said that he actually comes to Earth years and years, decades before issue 1 of Mr. Miracle, and lives a whole life on Earth. And that's why he's such a very different person in Mr. Miracle #1 than he is in Mr. Miracle #9. It's kind of like Goofus and Gallant. Mr. Miracle #19 was an example of a really amazing creative team firing on all cylinders, following up after Jack Kirby and doing a pretty good job of it. And then here's a team, also very talented, all creators that I'm fond of, but it's just not really gelling, and it's a valiant attempt, but I'm not feeling it. Although it is worlds better than the Return of the New Gods story that was in first issue special. That one was just very forgettable. And we get the story behind the story. Paul Levitz giving a little rundown about on the New Gods, getting up to speed, tipping the hat to Jack, talking about how great Jack was, and what a great thing he created here, and how they're gonna do their best to bring it back. I'm Tom Scioli, author of Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics. I Am Stan, a graphic biography of the legendary Stan Lee, and Jack Kirby's Star Warriors, The Adventures of Adam Starr and the Solar Legion. I'm also the author of Witchman, a new superhero comic book, which recently had a successful Kickstarter campaign. I'll see you next time for New God Sunday School.